Landon Crow stood at the edge of Gate 17, his boots caked in dried Oklahoma clay, the kind that cracks open like ancient parchment under the sun. He didn't belong there. Everyone knew it the moment he stepped into the private jet terminal. Smelling like windswept wheat and worn denim, his wide-brimmed hat cast a shadow across his weathered face, not hiding the steel in his eyes but making it harder to look away. It wasn't just the clothes. It was the silence that followed him in, like he brought something ancient with him, something older than the marble floors, older than the men in suits who smirked when he asked to see the Falcon 2000 LX. You, sitting there now watching this, don't blink, because what you're about to witness didn't just happen. It slipped through the cracks of what we call real. And now that you've opened this, you're already inside it. The salesman, Brett McConnell, laughed the way people do when they want to feel better than someone else, even if they don't say it out loud. "Sir, this isn't a crop duster," he chuckled, eyes scanning Landon like a riddle too dumb to solve. "Jets aren't bought like tractors, you know." But Landon didn't flinch, didn't blink. He reached into his jacket, not quickly, just deliberately, and pulled out a USB drive wrapped in what looked like an old prayer cloth, stained with something darker than time. He slid it across the counter without a word. Brett didn't want to touch it, but he did, and that's when everything changed. The footage on that drive was silent at first, just static. Then, frames of a cornfield under moonlight, flickering like a memory trying to erase itself. Rows of crops bending, not to wind, but to something invisible. Coordinated, intelligent, and impossibly fast. In one frame, a figure stood in the Badia field, facing the sky. In the next, it was gone, vanished, but not like someone ran away. No rustling, no exit path, just missing. Brett paused the video, hand shaking, trying to backtrack. That's when the screen crackled again, this time with audio. A voice, not Landon's, not Brett's, whispered 3 words. "He's still flying." Nobody else in the airport heard it, just Brett. He turned to Landon, demanding answers. But Landon only said one thing before walking away. "You already met him. You just didn't know it." The next morning, Brett was gone. Not like he quit, gone. No resignation, no family contact, no data trail. His office scrubbed, his name replaced. The janitor swore he saw Brett talking to a child late that night, barefoot, in a pilot uniform, 2 sizes too big, near the hangar. The child looked up and said something in a voice not theirs. "I remember your crash." Nobody ever found the security footage, except for one frame, one single photo. And you're looking at it right now. In the corner of the image, where light bends where shadows shouldn't fall, there's a man hat low watching. Not from the ground, but from the reflection on the jet's mirror-finished fuselage. And the timestamp? It's dated 3 years before Landon ever walked into that airport, which raises the question no one dares to ask. But you're asking it now, aren't you? What if Landon Crow didn't come to buy a jet? What if he came to take it back? And if that's true, then someone lied to you about what happened over Kansas airspace at 2:03 a.m. last March. Because that wasn't a storm. That was a re-entry. And the jet never came down. The moment the screen went black after that timestamp, everything started to unravel. Not outside, but inside Brett's mind. You might think you're watching a clear, undeniable truth, a real unsolved mystery peeling back the veil on something no one tells you about. But what if the image, the voice, the whole thing was just a crack in the surface of his reality, fracturing slowly, silently? Days after Brett disappeared, I found myself in his apartment. The place was untouched, but the air was thick, like memories had been soaked up and never released. His phone lay on the kitchen counter, buzzing with notifications from contacts that didn't exist, messages with no sender, voicemails with nothing but static, and on his laptop a recording that made me stop cold. His voice, but not his words. Whispered fragments that twisted in and out of coherence, muttering about shadows behind shadows. Something watching from the static, something waiting to be remembered. And that's when the doubt hit me like a fist. Was Brett losing his mind before he vanished? Or was something else breaking through? I played the recording again, slower this time, desperate to catch a clue. The words were fragmented, but one phrase cut through the haze like a warning. They don't want you to remember what you saw, or you never really saw it at all. It was the kind of thing that leaves a mark, like a poison buried in the soul, making you question every flicker of memory you hold dear. Then there's Naomi, Brett's sister, or maybe someone who claims to be. She found me that night. Eyes, hollow but burning with something I couldn't place. Grief, fear, or something deeper, a tangled knot of secrets. She told me Brett had been seeing things, hearing voices no one else could. She said he started keeping journals filled with nonsense, scribbles about fractured time, and hidden angles in the air. But the more she spoke, the more her story shifted, like a mirage moving with the wind. Sometimes she remembered details that contradicted her first words. Other times she seemed to forget entire conversations we'd just had. She warned me not to trust what I saw on that drive, that it might have been planted, or worse, a symptom of something Brett brought back with him. There was a moment, late into the night, when her voice dropped to a whisper, trembling as she glanced over her shoulder toward the shadows gathering just beyond the window. "You have to understand," she said, voice cracking. "This isn't just about a missing man or a stolen jet. It's about the truth behind what no one wants you to remember. The truth behind what happens when you stare too long into the darkness and it stares back." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to tell myself this was just trauma, a brother lost to his own mind. But the next morning a text popped up on my phone from an unknown number. Just 2 words. "Look closer." I tried to reply, but the message vanished before I could send. The apartment's security cameras, supposedly offline since Brett's disappearance, had recorded a shadow slipping through the hallway. Something too quick, too fluid to be human. And every time I looked at that old footage, a cold whisper tickled the edge of my hearing, so faint it might have been the wind or something else. So now I'm left with this unbearable question, one no one in the airport asked aloud, but maybe you should. When the line between mental breakdown and supernatural interference blurs, when memories are stolen before you even know you had them, how do you trust what you think you saw? How? Do you untangle the real unsolved mystery from the dark stories they bury in silence? Because if Landon Crow did take back that jet, then what landed here wasn't just a machine, it was a key. A key to a door no one wants opened, and somehow, I'm already inside the room. For a moment it felt like the storm had broken. I stumbled onto a file deep in the archived flight logs, something no one had talked about before, hidden away in encrypted folders labeled with code names nobody cared to decode. The flight path matched Landon's impossible arrival perfectly, a jet disappearing from radar, then reappearing hours later with no official explanation. The data was clean, almost clinical, like someone wanted it found, but only if you knew where to look. I played the raw audio from the cockpit. For the first time, it wasn't static or whispers, but a clear, steady voice. A pilot's voice, calm and professional, repeating coordinates, then silence. A glitch. A memory glitch. But the coordinates led to a place I recognized, the same stretch of Kansas farmland where Landon had first been seen, and where Brett's footage had flickered and failed. I thought I had the hidden truth. I thought I could finally say, this is what happened. The mystery uncovered. But the deeper I dug, the more everything slipped through my fingers like smoke. There was a photo buried in the same files, a faded Polaroid from decades earlier, showing a family picnic on that same farm. A little boy, no older than 5, staring directly at the camera with eyes that seemed too old to belong to a child. The boy's name was lost to time, but the date on the back was unmistakable. Exactly 35 years before the jet's disappearance. And then the nightmare began to bleed through the cracks of my own memory, like a shadow in the corner of a room I'd left too long unlit. I remembered a vague fragment from my childhood, a family story I'd buried deep, the night my grandfather vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a single whispered name that no one dared say aloud ever again. I had thought it was a dream, a trick of the mind. But now, faced with this old photograph, the fear settled in my chest like a cold stone. The same fear that had haunted Brett. The same silence that Landon had carried with him into that airport. And beneath it all, something else was watching. Something patient. Something older than any of us. Hidden just beyond the veil of sight and sound, feeding on our fractures and fractures of memory. It wasn't a person, not a thing. It was the space between moments. The flicker in the corner of your eye when you're sure you're alone, but you're not. It whispered to Brett in his last days. It whispered to Landon before he stepped into that terminal. And it's whispering to me now, like a pulse beneath my own heartbeat. You're not crazy. They lied to you. The entire story, all the footage, the voices, the vanishings, they were never meant to be understood. They were meant to distract, to mask a deeper unraveling. And then, just as I thought I could breathe, I found it. A detail so small I almost missed it. In that grainy Polaroid, barely visible behind the boy's shoulder, was a figure standing, impossibly still, half hidden in shadow. Its eyes weren't human. They glowed faintly, a soft, unnatural light that seemed to pierce right through the years. It was the same light I'd seen reflected in the jet's fuselage, the same light Brett had described in his fractured journals. And suddenly, the entire story flipped. Nothing was what it seemed. The jet, the vanishings, even Brett's disappearance, they weren't incidents or accidents. They were part of something older, something alive in the spaces we don't look, in the memories we don't trust. You need to watch it again. Every moment, every whisper, every hesitation now means something new. Because this isn't just a mystery uncovered, it's a puzzle designed to trap us all. And whatever's been watching from the beginning is still waiting, just beyond the edge of the frame. There are others. You have to understand this first. I am not alone in what I've seen. From the moment those fragments slipped into my life, the jet's impossible arrival, Brett's disappearance, the ghostly photograph of a boy with two old eyes, others have been watching too. Not from some distant place or detached curiosity, but from a space so close it's almost suffocating. They're out there, scattered across cities, small towns, late-night forums, encrypted message boards. Ghosts in the digital shadows who've been silently tracking the same dark thread that's pulling me under. It's as if we're connected by something intangible, a web spun from shared dreams and half-remembered whispers, a secret communication that feels less like chance and more like a warning written between the lines of what they want us to see. You might have felt it too, that strange chill when a symbol appears repeatedly, not quite explained, or a phrase slipping into your thoughts that no one spoke aloud. It's happening to you because you've been pulled in, whether you realize it or not. I've started receiving messages, cryptic, fragmented, through channels I never expected. A flicker of static on my phone, a screenshot with coordinates and numbers that rearranged themselves when I blinked. Late at night I see flashes in my dreams, brief, vivid scenes of a dark room lined with filing cabinets, a blurred face that shifts every time I try to hold it steady. I wake with a phrase echoing in my mind, never fully clear but deeply unsettling. You were right all along. These are not coincidences. They are pieces of a puzzle, whispers from a collective that has seen what I've seen, and from the way their messages sync with mine, I'm beginning to understand that this is no isolated case but a pattern repeating over decades. I found footage from 20 years ago buried deep on a forgotten server. Grainy, uncut video of an abandoned airstrip, shadows moving just beyond the camera's reach, and the unmistakable flicker of that same unnatural light reflected off a forgotten plane's tail. The government never released this footage, but here it is, bleeding through the cracks, revealing a story they tried so hard to bury. And then there's this third voice, one I didn't expect, coming through like a distorted signal from somewhere no one thought to look. The voice belongs to someone calling themselves Callum, a self-described observer who's been piecing together the fragments from his own fractured reality, Someone who claims to be the only one telling the truth in a narrative twisted by lies and forgetfulness. Callum's perspective is disorienting, almost too raw to believe. He speaks of identity as a fluid thing, slipping through the cracks of memory like sand through fingers, of control being an illusion crafted by forces that feed on confusion and fear. He warns that what we think of as ourselves, the stories we tell about our past, the clarity of our memories, are battlegrounds for a deeper power. Callum says this force watches us not just from shadows or silence, but from within the very fabric of our minds, reshaping what we know, controlling what we forget, and planting seeds of doubt that grow into labyrinths. The longer I listen, the more I realize that this force is not a distant monster or some hidden cabal, but something intimately woven into the stories we've lived, the identities we've built, and the memories we hold dear. It's in the flicker of a screen, the pause between words, the spaces where silence feels too heavy to be natural. It's what's been watching us since the boy in the photograph stared into the camera with those two old eyes, and what followed Landon through the airport doors when he stepped into a world that had already started to forget him. And now, as these voices converge, the silent watchers, the fragmented memories, Callum's haunting warnings, it's clear that the story we thought we were unraveling is only the surface of something far more tangled and dangerous. So here we are, caught in a loop where every revelation pulls us deeper into uncertainty, where every certainty is just another layer of control designed to keep us guessing, doubting, and above all, silent. You might feel it already, that creeping suspicion that the people who told you what to believe were hiding the real story, that your own mind might be the battlefield where this unseen war is fought. But if you've made it this far, if you've felt the weight of these fragmented truths pressing against your consciousness, then maybe you're ready to see beyond the veil. Because what comes next isn't an answer or a resolution, it's an invitation. An invitation to watch again, to listen closer, and to confront the fact that what we think of as reality may just be the most elaborate lie of all. And in the spaces between the lies, something waits, patient and unblinking, watching us all as we try to remember who we really are. There comes a moment, buried deep beneath all the shadows and whispered secrets, when the question stops being, "What happened?" and shifts to "Why?" When the fragments stop demanding answers about facts and timelines, and begin pressing on the raw nerve of existence itself, forcing you to face the unbearable weight of what this story says about us, about the fragile architecture of being. Human? I found myself standing at that precipice, staring into the abyss, not because I was searching for truth, but because the truth had found me first, and it wasn't a gift, it was a reckoning. It whispered that understanding could shatter me, or somehow, if I was brave enough, it might save me. And for the first time, I realized the mystery was never about the vanished jet, the missing people, or the strange light in the dark. It was about fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of forgetting, fear of losing control over the stories we tell ourselves to stay whole. I confess now, there was a moment when I wanted to turn away, when the cold realization that the faces I thought I knew were fragmented, mirrors of a self I never truly understood, pressed so heavily against my chest I could barely breathe. This was no longer a puzzle of external events. It was an unmasking of my own soul's fragility. I saw it in Landon's eyes, the way his gaze held both terror and an aching hope, as if he carried all the unanswered questions of the universe in his silence. And I saw it in Brett's broken journal entries, scattered like desperate prayers scribbled in the dark. The line between nightmare and memory blurred until I couldn't tell if I was searching for a truth buried in the world or a truth buried inside myself. The choice became unbearable but clear, to keep chasing the truth, knowing it might unravel everything I am, or to step back, live with the uncertainty, and accept the lies we tell to survive. It was the kind of choice no one prepares you for, a doorway where every step forward risks annihilation, yet every step backward is surrender. In that unbearable silence, I whispered a confession, not just to the empty room, but to myself, that maybe the real terror isn't what hides in the shadows, but what lives inside our own hearts when faced with what we refuse to see. And as the cold light of that revelation settled, I understood something terrifying and beautiful all at once. The story isn't over. It can never be. Because the moment you glimpse what lies beneath, the dream fractures, and you wake. But what if waking means realizing the world you knew was the dream? What if the true story is not in the past or the future, but in this fragile moment between sleep and consciousness where everything you thought was real starts to dissolve? So I leave you here, standing at the edge of the unknown, feeling that slow, sinking weight of a world shifting beneath your feet. There are no easy answers, no neat endings, only the pulse of a truth too vast and too intimate to ever fully grasp. The mystery isn't something to solve, but something to live with, a shadow inside us all, whispering in the quiet hours when we think no one's watching. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.